Hey everyone, thanks for joining in for this panel. Today we have four guests who will be talking about this topic, evolution of Metaverse, trends and challenges. Just to briefly introduce myself, I am Ayush. I'm part of a VC, hashed Emergent. We are based in Bangalore. We invest in early stage projects and emerging markets, and we have been doing it for the last couple of years. So without further ado, I'll leave it to the panelists to briefly introduce.
Hi everyone, this is Joan, founder of Openfort. Openfort is a wallet abstraction for gaming, so anything related to Unity, Unreal Engine, and any other gaming engines that you can think of. We basically take the complexity of it and make it easy to interact with games.
Hey everyone, I am Michael Wagner, co-founder and CEO of Automata. That's the studio behind the game Star Atlas. Really excited to be here in Bangkok with you all today. Star Atlas is really a leading edge gaming platform, but we are leading those development efforts through a AAA Unreal Engine based space simulator, building on Solana. And we have a number of additional development objectives that include a browser-based application called Star Atlas Golden Era, as well as a mobile application that's a crew companion app and spin on the move to earn segment of the industry. And excited to get into Metaverse again.
Thanks.
Yeah, hi, I'm Renz, CEO and co-founder of BreederDAO. We mostly work with games, but it expands to general metaverse, I guess. And we actually do end-to-end. So primarily what we do is asset generation or creation, but we also work with user distribution and other things that games might actually need are, general metaverses.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan. I'm a principal here at BITKRAFT Ventures. BITKRAFT is a leading gaming investment firm and we do Web2 and Web3 investing. My role, I sit out of Singapore. I primarily invest across the Asia Pacific region.
Thanks. So to start with, to set the context, it's very important to get into what the meaning of Metaverse and what the historical context, how we came here, the evolution of it over the period of time, and our current state in 2024. Jonathan, you can start and others can take it forward.
Sure. To me, the metaverse has always been what I call a third space. So if you're familiar with the concept, it's basically a place in between home and work. And that's where you go and hang out with your friends. So traditionally, people in the Web2 world think of Starbucks as a very good manifestation of the third place because that's where a lot of people go and hang out. You don't necessarily go to Starbucks to have coffee. You go there because it fosters a sense of community. It's inviting. It's where you want to spend majority of your time outside of home and work. So I think a lot of gamers here and most people would attest to it that games have been around, have been a third place for many of us gamers for a long time. So you can, roses, I can't remember the saying, but essentially you can call it anything you want. But what it essentially is to me is a social network for people to connect and interact with each other.
Yeah, well, I guess to add to that, because I actually resonate with that a lot of people think that, when we talk about metaverse, it has to be like that Ready Player One concept, right? Where it's a full-on like AAA, I guess, like game where you can actually engage and interact with people. But I think, as Jonathan puts it, right, it's a third space. That's why for some people, social media, Facebook, and all of those like messenger apps are actually already considered as like a metaverse. And it's where they actually hang out with their friends, connect with other people, and do all sorts of things, right? So it doesn't have to be, the end state where it has to be a full-blown like 3D virtual animated kind of like world. It can very well be just a space for you to hang out and interact with other people. And I mean, like right now, yes, we're moving towards that, right? Like we're seeing developments around both AR and VR that is actually leading towards that. But yeah, it's still far from how we envision it. But yeah, like it's been developing and we actually decide on where we want to take it, right?
Yeah, first of all, I'm just really excited that we're getting back into the discussion of metaverse because I think largely over the last couple of years, we've seen this discussion point or this topic, this narrative fall out of favor. I think a lot of what people do in crypto is speculate towards financial potential and in investing in an asset per se. But from my viewpoint, we're already living in the metaverse. We have been living in the metaverse. I think it is an interoperable, interconnected, fully immersive extension of the internet as we know it today. I don't think it has to exclusively be hyper-realistic AAA cinematic worlds. I think that is a component of the metaverse, but things that we do online today. So whether that's socializing through various social networks, shopping and e-commerce, for example, browse, search, especially with the progression that we're seeing in, say, AI and the way that we can interact with AI. I think all of these are components of the metaverse and how we will live in a digital world in the future. And it's the combination and the meshing of our physical reality with these new digital realities, and it's the way that we're going to interact largely, not only with one another, but with the world itself.
Yeah, I think this three has been like the most complete definitions I heard of metaverse. So probably to bring in like a different perspective here, I think what we understand as metaverse will it will vary a lot across like different communities that you ask. Probably like people that hang out a lot on Twitter, they will think of metaverse as like their social status, where it's a number of followers that you have, and then that's kind of like the KPI that you have, like you really need to value, versus other people that might be, trading meme coins. It's like another, like maybe it's the P&L or like it's the volume that they do. It's that type of metaverse, the thing that they value. So eventually, I think that there's like a specific reputation that each community will have within their own metaverse. But it's true, like we all live in a metaverse somehow, and it all enriches our own, profiles in that metaverse in like any activity that we do, either in real life or either online.
I agree, Joan, that you mentioned that it's the most complete definition we have heard of, and it's a diverse one as well. But at the same time, it's important to define some of the values which are attached to this word metaverse, and what is the role of Web3 in enabling those values. Yeah, we can start with.
Yeah, sure. So as I said, I think like there's different values for different communities. My intuition here is that they would be people that they value a lot, social status. And so with that social status, there would be something around, hey, how many followers do I have, or how much volume I did trading something specifically, how much assets do I have of a game. But the overall idea of the metaverse is that you will have a persona or multiple personas, and then each one of these personas, they'll be customized for the community that you are interacting with. And I think that's the most important part of like the metaverse, that no matter where you are, you'll have like that this distinct profile of yours, that it will be easily, interactable maybe across them, or maybe like they are alone. But the point is that they will be, easy to interact with like these different protocols, etc., and they will have like the distinct variables.
Yeah, I think that what blockchain kind of brings to the world is this sense of permanence, of immutability, of trustlessness. These are all common buzzwords that you hear people throwing around in the space. I mean, there is a genuine ideology, though, underlying this new technology. Perhaps to me, though, what is most transformative about the integration of Web3 or crypto or blockchain into digital realms, whether that be gaming or this idea of the metaverse or the way that we interact with one another, is that it introduces a new paradigm for value exchange between users. This is the big thing in gaming, right? You get to own your assets, or you can engage in a gaming economy where you can earn digital currency that has real world value, or otherwise, like in our case, we have effectively built a platform that allows people to co-create alongside us. What's different in this equation with Web3 over everything else is that we provide avenues for mutual value exchange. If you're creating value in our game, you're actually able to retain that value. You can capture that value, or you can trade that with other people. This is radically different from the way that, say, any other game would historically operate, where you're expressly prohibited from trading your game assets under the terms and conditions, right? You're not allowed to sell your account. You're not allowed to extract any value from the game. And in fact, every capital flow or every dollar that goes into it goes directly to the game studio. It goes to the developers. Again, and the big difference here with Web3 is now people have an opportunity to not only create alongside us in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship, they get to retain value that they've created in the game. And I think that this is going to be so pivotal to the way that people interact with the internet in the future. And not to take us off on a tangent right now, but I'll just note things like digital identity management, where you can have security and privacy in your data, or you can take the path of capturing value off of that data. And we know that this is already emerging in crypto today.
Yeah, I'm gonna say and tell you that the biggest value is actually with the community, right? When we talk about like Metaverse and its evolution, it's really hyper dependent on like the people that actually live within that particular universe. And no one actually champions community other than Web3, right? You have Web2 that relies on super apps, for example, that determines everything and whatever it is that you can do within the platform. And suddenly you have Web3 that allows participation and, you know, at the heart of it, the community itself. And so if we were to actually think through that, right, where a metaverse is only as good as the people that actually builds around it, then we can say that Web3 is actually, or at least currently, the most superior idea that actually champions this entire concept.
You mind if I jump in really quickly? I just want to dovetail on that. Excuse me, because I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things I always say is that community is not a customer. A community is a component of building your business and a part of your business. And again, this just kind of goes to my point of there is shared value exchange. A community member is able to pull value out and also contribute value. I think it's just really great point. Well said.
Let me try to weave all these threads together, because I fundamentally agree with everything that's been said. I think historically over the last at least 2-3 years, what we've seen is the people's perception of the metaverse is one that's, you know, a 3D world, like what Renz alluded to. It's like the Ready Player One metaverse. But if you strip it down to the bare fundamentals of what a metaverse is that we have talked about, you know, community and whatnot, it is basically a place where it's persistent, where people can hang out. And this is where Michael's point on immutability is very important. There's persistence and there's a social layer to it. Now, if you and I and all of us jump into a game of Fortnite, we are in the metaverse. Now, if you remove the game layer, and there's no more game, then what are we in? We are in like a Zoom chat. Are we still in the metaverse? Arguably, yes, because persistence and social is all still there. Now, if you suddenly turn off all your videos and there's only sound, is that still the metaverse? It still is the metaverse, right? So I think the definition of metaverse, how you define it, really depends on what are the underlying principles you're using to describe it. And if only audio is enough, then Discord is a metaverse. Right, and the only difference between Discord and now is that it doesn't have Web3, which is like a good segue into why we need blockchain and why we need Web3. Now, technological innovation is something that's episodic and non-linear. And when we see this sort of 0 to 1 innovations, we have to pay attention, because this drives massive S-curves and this drives a lot of value creation, right? And this goes back to Michael's point in how does Web3 actually improve the state of things compared to what we had before. So Discord doesn't have the level of persistence that blockchain can have. There is some persistence in the server logs and whatnot, but it's not the same level that blockchain can enable, right? So I think, so just to wrap up like this whole point, community and immutability, the powers of ability of blockchain to unlock this real 0 to 1 innovations is really at the core of what defines the metaverse of tomorrow from what we have seen in the past in Web2 games.
Thank you for touching on to the point where we are moving towards the metaverse of tomorrow, and in which it's important to understand the role of Web3. So the next part which I want to touch upon is what sort of economic system or virtual economy which we need to design to reach to that level which we are imagining right now, and how far are we in terms of it. I want Michael to start.
Yeah, I think the economy discussion is particularly relevant for game design, and especially for a massively multiplayer online game like Star Atlas. Virtual economies have existed, since the inception of the computing age, and when people started building video games for computers, or generally speaking, all the way down to the board game level, there is some element of economy that needs to be balanced for within those games. But when we speak about economy now, we're talking about functional, sustainable, real value economies for which people are able to, again, create value, extract value. I often bring up Axie Infinity as being a real pioneer in being able to demonstrate that there is genuine demand from, say, a non-gaming audience. This is in the Philippines, a non-gaming audience to participate in new digital labor markets. Now, say what you will about the sustainability of that model. What it proved to me is that there is significant potential to globally distribute a product with mass appeal. And it doesn't have to be a gamer. It doesn't have to be the investor speculator. It doesn't have to be even the trader. This idea of play to earn, again, is participation in a new labor market wherein opportunities exist that potentially exceed the standard of living, or the potential benefits that exist in local markets. I don't know if people realize how powerful that is. We're essentially tearing down global borders, and we're creating a unified economic system that is available to anyone. And if you can't find an opportunity that improves your life in the place that you reside, you don't actually have to move away now. You don't have to relocate yourself. And while we're seeing increases in digital nomadism, where people are moving for better benefits, whether that be through better systems of taxation on them, or better infrastructure, or just more value that's being provided to them under the governmental regime that they live in, perhaps less corruption. While that's occurring, you don't necessarily need to move now to realize those benefits. And that is being demonstrated right now through gaming, but this does extend into this broader idea of the metaverse. So I'll leave just one final example here, and I use this often, but within Star Atlas, we have a wide range of spaceships that range from very, very small, inexpensive ships to very, very large, expensive ships. Now, we realize that the average person on the planet is not going to be able to spend, say, $100,000 on a spaceship for a digital asset. However, that $100,000 spaceship is able to produce real-world value. There will be capital allocators out there that purchase these ships with the sole intention of providing access to that, whether it be through a rental system or a scholarship system, some type of lending model. And now we have a gamer, a player who's been able to establish and develop the expertise through gameplay progression to actually operate that asset, and they could become in demand. So imagine being a digital game spaceship commander that gets paid an exceptionally high wage, especially given the large disparity in wages around the world, just to be a ship operator, because it produces real value for the owner. This is Web3 in a nutshell, and especially within gaming.
Thanks, Michael, for that. Renz, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think this is actually a pretty interesting topic because I was chatting with a friend, and he actually mentioned that, if you look at like layer ones, if you look at like game economies, right, we're not technically recreating the wheel. You can isolate every single L1 as like countries with their own GDPs based on the volume of transactions that actually happen within the system, right? But we're actually moving towards just making the market more efficient, right? So, I mean, remittances, for example, which is pretty huge from where I come from, which is the Philippines, right? We're just removing like middle people if we actually move towards a blockchain, right? So in essence, right, we're not trying to recreate the wheel because, for example, even assets within games already have value. It's just that because we're not allowing for these assets to be traded before, and people would have to go through like black market and all of that stuff, then there's a lot of friction, right? And people can't recognize like a value for that one. But now that we're actually incorporating Web3 and there's exchange of value that becomes possible from one asset class to another, then we're technically just allowing people to trade whatever it is that they want and make the market more efficient altogether instead of like having to go through all of this friction.
Thanks. Jonathan, do you want to add?
I actually wrote like a very similar thread that Michael talked about unlocking economies across the world. And I think if you think about if you roll back the clock like 100 years and you were in Singapore when it was still a third world country, your only way to access wealth is, I don't know, say barter trading, right? Like the people around you, and as you get a bit wealthier, maybe you buy a horse or a goat, you go to the city and then you trade with that, right? And then you're moving like this friction that's over there, and you cannot overcome this friction because it takes generations to overcome that friction, right? And with Web3, it's basically that ability to unlock that moment for everybody to interact with like the global audience. There's some form of like a geographical arbitrage, if you will, and removing friction is like a trillion-dollar industry in the world. Like Uber is about removing friction, so is DoorDash. Right? A lot of these conveniences that when we remove it, it generates a lot of enterprise value for businesses and for people, right? So I think Web3 has this like very interesting ability to do that. I mean, we saw it in XC, and obviously they haven't cracked the sustainability code, right? But with the future iterations, and hopefully with Star Atlas, we're going to see them achieve that sustainability model and unlock that virtual economy for the rest of the world.
Yeah. As you mentioned, unlocking the virtual economy is a key part, but one of the most important thing is to solving for user experience and to create that critical infrastructure which can enable a smooth experience for the user. Joan, I want to start with you. How do you see this problem of UX right now, and where are we in terms of solving it in Web3?
Yeah, I think the UX problem is interesting, and probably tapping back onto the Axie Infinity and like how the whole play to earn got so massive. Eventually, it was like an incentive. It's an incentive mechanism, right? At the time, you had like a terrible UX, but like the potential of like making a living in like this third party countries made it worth for people to actually go through like these UX issues and still be able to make a living. Now we are in a situation where the drawbacks of the UX are so much reduced to the point that you can now onboard people that are not that driven by the financial incentives, but are actually more driven as well from the fun of it, for just simply disconnecting or getting into this metaverse of their own, right? So what we actually gonna start seeing is like more people that are less constrained by, hey, I need to make a living, just jumping into the space, and from opening up the barriers of the business models that traditionally were one-to-one, where the players were directly paying the game studios. We start seeing like one-to-N or N-to-M, where players will start interacting with one another, and then the studio will just pretty much enlarge, let's say, the economic value that they created, because people start seeing like the metaverse is more of like a social layer too. So my intuition here is that reducing the UX and increasing the number of touch points across this metaverse that each kind of like community game project is trying to create will increase the enterprise value, let's call it like the total value that is generating, to a point where today, cake will be minuscule. It wouldn't matter anymore because it will increase just by, adding more potential, let's say, stakeholders into the project.
I just want to take a moment just to go back on the idea of sustainability, and I think it actually correlates with this whole discussion around UX, but thinking through the fundamentals of economic architecture is something that we've been doing since the very beginning of designing Star Atlas. We understand that the economy itself is a foundational unit to the product that we're building, and yes, it's imperative that we develop out an incredibly enjoyable and immersive and entertaining gameplay experience. That's the ultimate goal. That's the retention mechanism, and what will encourage users to spend hours or hundreds of hours or thousands of hours playing Star Atlas. But ultimately, part of the benefit and value proposition that we're making is that, hey, we're building an economy that you can participate in, not for the next year or next 10 years, but maybe for the next 100 years. And maybe we are building the first digital nation state that will persist and evolve through time with decentralized governance. That's very powerful, but how do you accomplish that sustainability given you have these economic incentive mechanisms through asset inflation? That has been the standard model for a while. It's been the model that has been proven to not be sustainable, and it's a great tool for attracting a lot of users in the near term. However, if you want them to stick around and your core value proposition is you're earning X amount and then that all of a sudden goes away, well, you will lose your users as well. And so that adds a lot of volatility. People generally like stability in their life. They like a routine. They like to get up and do the same thing. They like to know that they have a job tomorrow. And so if you can retain that, then you'll also retain the users, plus they'll be entertained along the way. The way we think about this, though, is about establishing really a more conventional economic model of production and consumption and balancing those things out. And that might sound intuitive or easy, but it's not using our token emissions as the core incentive, but actually layering in layers of specialization and nuance and kind of niche industry for the user so that they're able to establish a foothold for themselves. Not every player in Star Atlas is able to master every gameplay mechanic. And it's because of that nuance that users are forced to effectively trade with one another. One person might be mining hydrogen and refining fuel and selling that to every other player. Some player might be mining copper and turning that into ammunition. Another person might just be interested in one of the gameplay modalities that we have, which is going out and racing, which consumes those items. And so it's connecting people. And again, the difference here is we're not sitting in the middle saying we're the exclusive seller of these resources that everybody has to use in the game. We're saying, no, here's a marketplace, and there's a person that made it, and you're a person that needs to buy it, and we're going to connect you to. Now, we will take a fee on that for making that connection, but that is effectively a zero-sum game. It's non-inflationary because you're one person buying and one person selling. So as it relates to user experience, what's challenging there is if you have all of these deep layers of specialization throughout the game, then is it overly complex for a user to come in and start playing? Are they confused immediately? How steep is that learning curve? And so our viewpoint on this is we need to create an experience that's simple to play, but difficult to master. Through specialization, you can optimize your own potential, but you at least have an opportunity to get in and try out the game. And then that would extend to things like, how do we simplify user onboarding? How do we promote the education and use of cryptocurrency, of setting up a wallet, of making sure you're secure? These are all important elements of it. I think free-to-play experiences are a great way to accomplish this because you can have zero risk for the user to come attempt to play. If it's enjoyable to them and they see the future potential, you've now captured their heart and their mind.
Well, I'm going to say that, UI UX really depends on community, and it goes back to that, right? So, Ordinals and Runes, for example, do not have like the best UI UX, but that same reason is what makes it bullish, right? The friction that exists between like buying or transacting within that ecosystem is what people, or at least the current community, believes to be bullish, right? And so for me, if you're optimizing for that kind of thing where the idea is that you'd want your floor price to increase and the community thinks that having friction is actually the best route to go, then, our definition of making the UI UX frictionless is not going to work for them, right? But on the other hand, right, if you're trying to build a game and you want to have the most number of users, then understanding what makes sense for a good majority of the people you want to incentivize to actually participate is crucial. And oftentimes, the easiest one is actually the best way to do things. So UI UX as a feature of anything that we're trying to build is ultimately based off what the community we want to attract actually within our own ecosystems.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on, and I'll provide in the perspective from a gaming investor. For gaming investors and VCs in general, you're really looking for the unicorn, decacorn outcomes. So if I back a studio, I really hope that this becomes the next MiHoYo, right? So when you are on that scale, you are addressing the mass market, and people fundamentally are lazy. everybody's lazy. There's not a single product out there that rewards you for going through friction. Like that, that just doesn't exist, right? I'll give you like some statistics, right? Do you know when you play a game and when you turn on the app for the first time, sometimes there's a loading screen that asks you to register, either sign up for a new account or single sign on with your Google account or Apple Store. That in general causes 50 to 80% of downloads to churn. That is how lazy people are in general, right? So many things in our lives and in gaming and consumer entertainment index around removing friction as much as possible. So if you are someone who's in crypto today, you are probably already one of like, call it the innovators or early majority, right? But the mass market is actually in the late majority and onwards. And that's where you want to address. So if you are making a game and not infra layer or whatnot, if you're just making a game and you want to make it as big as possible, there's as many users as possible, then abstracting away crypto is actually pretty important. I think 3 years ago, during the last cycle, I think there were two schools of thought. And I think one school was what I just mentioned. The other school was that no, this is the way people understand crypto and master it, right? So I think as the cycle has progressed, I think we increasingly see people removing friction as much as possible and making everything easier. And hopefully that will continue to drive more adoption for crypto.
Thanks, Jonathan. Just because we are already there on time, I want to ask the last question, which everybody can touch upon. To start with you, Jonathan, what are some of the interesting trends which you are looking at right now? And if you want to make any predictions.
That's like a half an hour topic. But I think second half of this year and first half of next year, we will see a lot of like real games, not real games, but like, projects that have been baking for like the last 2-3 years, just dying to come out of the gate and show people what they've built. So I'm really excited to see, hopefully, my biggest wish is the game that actually brings Web2 gamers into Web3 and make Web3 games a thing of the past. It's just going to be called games.
Right, I agree. I'm also like deeply involved with like gaming, and we're seeing like a lot of good games come out. I mean, Star Atlas is probably one of those top tier ones, right? But yeah, it's interesting because Axie Infinity was trying to showcase what blockchain can do for the game, right? Started off with that entire play to earn campaign. Recently, some of the games that have launched doesn't really showcase any of these blockchain applications. It's just a pure game that can exist without blockchain. And hopefully, like towards the end of this year, we'll see like people trying to merge both, right? The application of like gaming or blockchain on gaming and like really good quality games that even ordinary individuals would try and use.
I'm pretty excited about blockchain myself. Now, I will say I'm actually really excited about fully on-chain gaming logic, specifically because that allows for co-creation and seamless integration. On the immersive side, I think it's AR, VR, of course, and AR specifically just because, your ability to kind of interact with the physical world through AR experiences is enhanced through that. AI is going to contribute significantly to game development, not only on production timelines, but also, once again, on the immersiveness of the game. So specifically thinking about things like AI agents, wherein the NPCs are far more interactive, dynamic, and fluid with the interaction with players in much the same way it would feel as if you were interacting with another player. That's particularly important in MMOs that are hyperscale, large environments where you would otherwise have zero player collisions or zero interactions with players. You're now out there interacting with NPCs, but you don't even know that it's not a real player.
Yeah, I'm particularly excited for my mom to come one day and say, Joan, look at this new game that I downloaded on my phone. It's pretty addictive. And then realizing that it's a blockchain game. But jokes aside, I think alternative app stores, more games mobile are the two big trends that I'm watching at this point.
I'm glad nobody said meme coins.
I did forget to say pixel streaming though.
Yeah, attention economy. It's a big thing too. Yeah, good point.
Great. Thanks for joining in, everyone. We are already there on time. There are other questions as well, but we'll address that later. Thank you so much again for joining in for this topic. Thank you.
Thanks.